All right, good evening. Get the volume dialed in here. Hello? Oh, I gotta get really, really close. Seeing as it's 6 o'clock, we'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, January 27th to order. Please call the roll.
Here.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Stoker. Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, approval of the minutes from December 2nd. Motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Complaints? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, we have two consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve those consent agenda items?
Second.
Any one of the applicants see a reason to pull them out and debate them separately? Seeing no takers, we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda items. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those two items are approved. On to public hearings. The public hearing for Catalyst Construction, application seeking conditional use grant approval to allow for an accessory dwelling for the property located at 2707 West Cassell Lane. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone here this evening that wishes to speak on this item, other than maybe the applicant? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing? Motion and a second. All those in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are back. Brief overview from staff.
Yeah, so this is a request. This request is a conditional use. House is in the R1 zoning area on 27.22 acres. The plan put forth will see the existing house becoming the accessory dwelling unit, and the major addition that's going to be added will be the primary dwelling unit. The ADU meets code standards. It's less than the 40% of the living area of the primary dwelling unit, and it fits in the surrounding area, which is primarily also zoned R1. So staff is recommending approval of the conditional use grant for the accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for staff? Or is the applicant here, someone representing the applicant side? Yeah, please, you can come up and join the discussion. Any questions for staff? Okay. I think I did see there was one note from, I think, someone on the applicant side regarding the kitchen. Do we want to offer any feedback? This a similar item just came before us a month or two ago.
Well, this one's a little different because this is attached, so this one can have a full kitchen.
Okay.
The other one we were dealing with was a detached,
Okay.
guest house, basically.
Okay, so that's okay in this
Yeah, and
instance.
this is okay.
Okay, so maybe there's a little confusion over that item. Thought there was a request to consider it, but if it's allowed, then we don't need to discuss it.
Yeah, that's why we're here tonight, is to approve it as an ADU. That's the definition of ADU, is it has to be attached to the house.
Okay, perfect. Completely conforming in every way. I like it. Any questions from the commission for anyone on staff? I've had the unique opportunity to actually be in what will now be the guest suite. Yeah, it's an interesting space. It's pretty neat. It'll make a nice guest house for the new main house. No questions or a motion.
Motion to approve per staff's recommendations.
Second.
Motion and a second. Oh, now the mic's working. Well, I'll turn the gain down here a little bit. If there are no further questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that item's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. It's a cool property. Now on to regular business. We have just 3 items left for the evening. The first is David Reckers for Reckers Company. The applicant is seeking a minor request for a master sign plan approval for the property located at 11155 North Wauwatosa Road, the mobile station, associated with the car wash we previously approved.
Yes, so this request is a master sign plan approval for a mobile car wash. It's located at 11155 North Wauwatosa Road, zoned B1. There was a building and site plan amendment and an expansion of a non-conforming use for this mobile car wash that was initially approved back in May of 2023 and then was granted a subsequent extension in September of 2024. The master sign plan has 8 total signs, 5 are freestanding, 3 are wall-mounted. Staff requested clarification on some of the locations of the signs, which the applicant provided, and we also requested that the entrance sign, which is seen projected here, be changed from a yellow arrow to a red. The applicant agreed with this, so that's reflected in this packet. And aside from that, staff doesn't see any issues, as most of the signs are within the car wash queue and not public-facing. This is the only one true public-facing sign, which is why we wanted it to match the mobile car wash branding and kind of the color scheme that already exists there. So staff is recommending approval of the master sign plan.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions from anyone for staff? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the tarps are out waiting to keep the ground soft as well, so. So am I.
You need a car wash on your side of town? And whenever I drive by the Quick Trip, it's always a line 10 people deep, and I just won't wait. Excellent. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve per staff recommendations.
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item 2 is approved. Congratulations. Look forward to seeing it completed. Our next item is Brixmore SPE 1 LLC. The applicant is seeking a minor request for a master sign approval for the property located at 10906 through 11116 North Port Washington Road, the Mequon Pavilions.
So we've been working with the owners of the building to develop a new master sign plan based on a couple of previous issues. One was the facade changes that were made a number of years ago. Don't really meld well with the existing master sign plan. And we've also had 3 iterations of the master sign plan with some of the language actually got forwarded through the process that wasn't actually approved, that was requested. So it's been kind of a messed up situation. So we're trying to clarify and clean it up as much as possible. We've been working on it for about a month or so. It's been a rather difficult process just to get everything cleaned up. We're still working on it, but in the meantime, they wanted to get this portion approved to help Sierra out. I'm not sure if anybody has seen it, but I have a picture of here, the little pinprick that represents the logo for Sierra. That's based on the current requirements. So they're asking to increase the logo size which would kind of similar to what we see here. So can be larger than the letters, but it can't exceed more than 50% of the sign area. The logo requirement was actually added by them as a request to one of the previous sign versions. The original sign plan for the pavilions didn't have any requirement for a logo size, and our current code doesn't really regulate logo size. You could have a logo as your entire sign if you wanted to. So we're okay with the suggestions they're making. It would actually make Sendex to be more back in compliance with the code. They were previously approved under the previous sign plan. So as you can see, they have the bag as a logo, which kind of matches what the Sierra is looking to do. It's a little larger than the font of the lettering. So this is just step 1. We expect to see them back in the next month or 2 to go over the rest of the sign issues. But we wanted to get this going so that Sierra could put up a bigger logo for their store. So with that, we do recommend approval.
And you took away one of my questions. I was going to ask if we were going to see a few more items come back, because I know there's some movement in this space lately, but good to know we're chipping away at it.
Yeah, it's been difficult. There's so many different facade sizes now that there's not a uniform. The old pavilions had like just one big band across the whole entire store. Now you have these tower elements everywhere, so it's really difficult to kind of explain every situation that could possibly happen in the master sign plan. But we're working on it. So
Sounds good. Looks like there's a question from Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's in advance of the next wave. The logo, this makes sense to me. I'm thinking back to, I don't know how many years ago this was, when it was the Shopko Optical that came forward, and I can't remember if they were asking for their green lettering or if they put it up without asking. Do we have a guideline around branding color in your lettering
The
versus
original,
the white?
sign plan for the pavilions had to be white. Everything
Okay.
had to be white. We changed that, I think, in 2015 or 2017, I believe. So then after that, they've been allowed to use the colors they prefer.
Like Big Frog being bright green
Yeah,
and,
correct.
and whatnot.
But
Okay.
the original plan required all white lettering.
And some of them still just
Yeah, there's some older ones that are still there. I think Great Clip still
Wild
has the original signage is still from 15 or 20 years ago.
okay. So that would persist.
Yes.
People had been asking about that. Like
Mm,
Yeah, we went.
some of them are a little more jarring than others, but if it's part of their branding and it's allowed, then so be it.
And they have to, just because there's a sign plan in place, they still have to be approved by the owners as well as the city. So we do look at them from an aesthetic standpoint. And if we feel something might be concerning, we would bring it from the planning commission.
Good question and a little bit of a history lesson. You imagine if they were still all white, yeah?
I know that, so.
A couple of us have been here a while, yeah. Any other questions? Commissioner Barnes?
Yeah, I think you touched on this, but just to verify, here we're talking about two of the stores, the bigger stores, Sendex and Sierra, both being bigger stores at either end of it with the special. Is there, I guess, similar sign sizes at all the other stores?
Well, that's what we're kind of working through now because
that's why I wanted to get.
Yeah, we're trying to deal with it because originally the thought was using anchor store requirements for certain anchor stores, but the problem is some of this, and if you go by square footage, some of the anchor stores are located in an area where they just have a small band. So that doesn't always work out that well. Like, you have Pure Hockey, if you call it Pure Hockey, looks like that's a 6,000 square foot roughly store, and they have a really big band. But then if you look at something else like the Fred Astaire, which is only about maybe 1,000 square foot less, they just have a smaller band. So we're kind of going through that now to figure out what the best way is. It might even be as easy or more difficult, but it might be easier for us to process would be just dedicate a band for each individual store there and to modify it as the stores change. Because some stores, like you're talked about the Big Frog one, they have a couple different areas where they could put signs, or even like Taco Pro, they have a couple different signs, or Jersey Mike's. They have different facades. I think the building looks nicer than it used to, but I think when we created all these different facades, we made it a little bit more difficult to enforce the sign plan consistently. So that's something we're working through, and they've been good to work with. We're both on the same page, I think, what the result should be, but we're just getting the language there is a little bit more difficult than we thought it would be.
Okay, I guess I concur with what you're saying and agree with for the two bigger stores, but would have concerns if it became a,
Yeah, we don't want to
competition
see
amongst all
we
the
don't want to
stores.
see really large signs all over, and that's one of the things we're trying to prevent.
Sure.
With the
Good.
way the sign plan was originally drafted, some of those bigger facades, you could take up 80% of that to be a large sign, even though they haven't done that in the past. We don't want to allow that to happen in the future either. So we're still working on how to limit the signs but keeping it somewhat uniform at the same time.
Okay.
Any other questions? Motion and a second. If there are no other comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that item's approved. We'll look forward to seeing you back and cleaning up some of the lesser items, but
Thank you.
good luck. And Sierra is wonderful, by the way. Great store. My family's lost hundreds of dollars to it already. All right, we have one final item on tonight's agenda. Technical Engineering Consultants LLC. The applicant is seeking final plat development agreement and a concept plan approval to allow for 37 lot subdivision for the property located at 1300 West Highland Road, the Highland Road Meadows subdivision. It looks like Cole's going to do some talking.
Well, I think we're both gonna talk a little bit.
Both
so.
gonna talk, okay.
Yes. So I'll just go over kind of the concept plan request change, and I think there was some emails I got from some of you today about that. So I kind of put this together just kind of to show you you had some questions about lot coverage. So the lot coverage requirement for this district is 20%. Now this district was created as a way to avoid having to go through the PUD process. And one of the things I think I need to stress is that in a PUD process, there is no lot coverage requirement. So all the PUDs that we have out there, unless it's specifically stated in the ordinance, will not have a PUD requirement. This kind of stems from like our R1 subdivisions, Hawks Bluff, Hawks Landing. There's a 5% lot coverage. Now on a 5-acre lot, that's still a big structure, but on a 1-acre lot, that can be really small. So we eliminated the requirement for the lot coverage in those districts. Now, when you look at the different districts we have, R3, which is an acre subdivision or acre size, that has a lot coverage of 15. R4, 3/4 acre, 15. R5 is 20%, and this is where we came up with the not only the Uleo Creek residential, but the CGA overlay has also a 20%. So so I put down there what the minimum lot size would be in these districts, and then what size of structure you could build here on these sites. Now, this is the first one in this Uleo Creek district, but we do have a couple other examples in the CGA overlay. So, Enclave 1, Highlander, and Swan Ridge, these are all 3 previously approved developments that have that 20% lot coverage. But the difference, I'd say, between this one and those is that this one has a smallest lot of 15,000 square feet, where those, they chose to have a little larger lot, so 18, 20, and 21,000 square feet. So if you look at what they could build on one of these lots, it's 4,300 or 4,100 square feet, where this one would be basically at the largest lot size in this grouping, it would be about 4,131. So it's pretty similar. Enclave is the only exception, I think, to this, where they have a smaller, but when you look at, and this is only Enclave 1, Enclave 2, which is the TDR site, which is a PUD, does not have a lot coverage requirement. So this is they're right next to each other. One has lot coverage, one doesn't. But they're allowed a 3,600 lot coverage requirement. Now, in this one, you actually see, I think most of those houses are actually 2-story because of that issue. And I just to remind everyone that a lot coverage is different than a FAR requirement. Lot coverage is just a square on the actual lot. So 2-story, you can build bigger 2-stories. So we try to tailor this amendment as close as possible to what they needed. So we're basically saying for 1-story structures on these lots under 18,000 square feet, they would be allowed a 23 FAR versus the 20. So that's the difference. Is there any questions about that specifically I can answer before I go on?
I'm sorry, did you just say 2-story houses or any
This is
story?
just for 1-story.
Okay.
So if it's a 2-story, even if it's on the smaller lot, they still have to abide by the 20%.
And that's the trade-off, is you're a little bit more lot coverage, but you're reducing that vertical massing, which is, I think that's visually when you start seeing those really big houses super close together, it's too much, but this will be, I think, kind of soften that quite a bit.
No, you're saying what I expected. I just thought I heard the wrong number in there, and then I wanted to check.
And then the other thing they agreed to as part of this is to not have any accessory structures, which a lot of subdivisions do limit them, but that's also included in the lot coverage requirement as well. And then as far as the rest of they have the street tree plan, which was approved by the tree board. We have an open space plan that was similar to what we've seen before. And then there's the development agreement amendment. Obviously, it's winter time. They haven't gotten anything done out there to finish everything. So some of this we've deferred to June, but some of it requires a formal amendment to the development agreement, and that's what Cole can speak to. And I'll let him take over from here.
Yeah, a couple notes on the DA agreements. Both are engineering related. One is for sanitary sewer flow restrictor system. If you guys recall, the original DA required a restrictor system due to downstream lift station capacity issues. Waiting on some electronic components due to some supply issues. So with some other conditions that are found in the DA amendment draft, we are pushing that to June 30th completion, or June 15th completion date, I believe. And then the other one is public sidewalk installation. DA, as it stands right now, requires that to be in prior to final plat approval, so that we are kind of with similar conditions, also proposing a June 30th completion date. We also would require that no building permits be issued along the homes or the properties that have driveway access through the sidewalk area. And that's more just due to coordination issues if the city were to have to implement it, how would you coordinate with several lots being built at the same time with each homeowner or builder? So we do recommend, staff does recommend approval of these as written. Obviously, if neither of them or one of them doesn't go through, that would prevent the DA amendment or the original DA language from not being met. So that would, cause our recommendation to go to either tabling or denial for final plat. And then we would recommend, if there's any changes to the DA amendments, to table it to allow for further staff and legal review.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the remaining commissioners up at the front here? Commissioner Schaefer.
So the maximum 13 lots are really what we're talking about out of the 37 that, sorry, I'm pointing at Jack's table. I don't need it, but that are subject to this change. We can't know at this point how many of those will be ranch homes, because it depends on who buys the lot and the type of home they want. But the maximum would be 13 that would exceed that. That would be subject to that 23% instead of the 20.
Correct.
And probably something less, because not everyone's looking for a ranch home. It's hard to predict. That's it.
Any other questions? I know some of us received an email cautioning not to turn Mequon into Grafton. So I did some checking. Grafton allows, in some of their zoning districts, 40% lot coverage. And I did some measuring on GIS, and indeed, a lot of the stuff they've built lately is right at the 40% threshold, and they're giant 2 stories with, I think there's even some living space on the half story above. So this is, it's going to be about half that, just a little over half in coverage, and then you won't have the second story, so you won't get that same visual feel where it's just packed in, just row after row after row of them. And yes, they're going to be kind of scattered throughout too. So I think it's an interesting compromise to trade a little vertical height for a little more space. We're not going too wild here. It's just a little bit above that 20% threshold.
And it's also a factor of how the size of the lot is shaped right now. I mean, they could have made larger lots if maybe the shape was a little bit different in terms of the overall, but it's a formula you have to kind of play with. And we put the requirement in there, but we also gave the ability to the Planning Commission to waive those requirements because we didn't want to have them to go through the PUD process. If this would have went through the PUD process like Highlanders or like Enclave 2, there would be no lot coverage requirement for any of these lots. We wouldn't have a lot coverage. So we still have restrictions on the lots we try to minimize as much as possible, but there's some flexibility there that we also wanted to see going forward.
It's a difficult one as you're trying to encourage more of these conservation style subdivisions with more generous outlots.
Yeah, it's a fine line. You have to play that game a little bit with the numbers.
Then you get a couple of factors, a smaller lot, and someone says, "Oh, I want a ranch with 3-car garage," and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, yeah, it doesn't work so well." So here we are. Any other comments from the commissioners? Or a motion?
I move approval.
Motion and a second. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? All right, hearing and seeing none, let's be dramatic and call the roll.
We're sharing a microphone tonight. Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Urbani.
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes.
Aye.
Mayor Nurbin.
Aye.
Vote passes.
And that brings us to our last item.
Thank you for your
Congrats.
consideration.
Look forward to seeing the progress out there. Announcements, next month's meeting, February 24th, right here at 6 o'clock. And that leaves us with just one item left on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second and a third. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. All right, good night, everyone.